Here we have a photograph that I shot of this car. If you look at it carefully, you can see there's a real problem, and that's why we've got this power pole right in the middle. So what we can do is we can actually get rid of that by using the clone stamp. Now there's some great features that we're going to use in the pressure sensitivity to help us with this, because if you look at this, in these areas here, it's actually quite precise, and it'll be very hard to clone these out in those little areas. So what we're going to do is, a technique I like to use, is creating a new layer. So we're going to go down here, we're going to create a new layer. And then what we're going to do is we're going to clone onto this new layer, and then we can just be very rough just to make sure that we get the background nicely cloned out. And then we're going to enhance it by using a mask. So let's grab our clone stamp tool. And with the new layer selected, we want to go up under sample and make sure that we've chosen all layers. Otherwise, we won't be sampling anything out of this blank layer. So what we're going to do now is we're going to be sampling from underneath and then cloning into the new layer. Now, to set up the different behavior of the clone stamp, we actually go into the brushes palette here, because the clone stamp is actually considered a brush. And we want to go into shape dynamics here. Well, first of all, let's grab a brush preset. Let's just grab, say, a 100 pixel soft brush. It's a good place to start. Then we're going to go into shape dynamics, and we're going to set that for pen pressure. And in the other dynamics, we could adjust things like the opacity. Sometimes there's a good time you want to do that, where you want to actually use a lower opacity and start to build it up. In this case, though, we're going to have the opacity off. So we're actually going to turn off for the other dynamics. And so the only thing that's going to change is the size. So as we click on these, the sizes are going to change. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to sample. So we're going to grab the Alt key and just click on an area to sample, and then we go over. Notice that you'll see something new now. This is brand new in CS4. You actually get a preview now of what's going to show when we stamp. This is the overlay. If you want to have a look under the options here, go under Windows, and under the Window menu, if we go down here, we're going to see a clone source. And if we look at the clone source here, this is the panel, and this is where we have the different options. We can change things. For example, we can change the size, we can change the offset, we can change the angle. And this here is the show overlay. If we turn that off, notice the overlay goes away. We turn that on, now we can see it. We can also play around with the opacity and the blend mode. Sometimes if you want to perfectly line things up, the difference mode is a way to do it, because you can actually see, for example, let me show you here. If we click right there, and you'll notice that it cancels itself out when you're exactly right on there. So that's good for precision, but typically you'll work in normal, and we're going to work in a normal view right now. If you turn off the clipped, you notice you get the whole thing here. So typically you like to turn it clipped so you get the brush size. So now let's start cleaning this up. We're just going to be working onto this new layer, grab the Option key, and we can see how that's going to look. So let's just start cloning this out. Just grab a couple of samples, and then just sample from different areas so we don't get a repeating pattern. So there we go, that tree's looking pretty good. Let's drop the brush size down a little bit. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to go down the side here. We're going to hit the Alt key, that would be Option on Mac, and then select it once more. And now we can actually line this up. Let's line that up there and just paint that out. And don't worry too much right now about the windows. We can clean up the car later. So right now we're looking at something that's, let's just clean up just a little bit more there so we don't get that repeating in the building. There we go. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you can see we've got a pretty good cloning out behind it. Let's grab over here just something, because we've got a bit of a repeating pattern there. And just go there and just merge that in. So there we go. We can see the background is nicely done. If we look at this before, and now we look at it after, we've cleaned up the background. All we need to do now is just paint back in the areas of the car. So we're going to do that with the masks. So we're going to use the new masks panel in CS4. And we can add a mask by clicking here. This is a pixel mask. And we click and notice a mask gets added. We could also just click the add mask down here like we always have in the past. But let's play with this panel just a little bit, because it's kind of fun and it's new. So what we're going to do now is we want to actually just go in and just clean this up. So we could go in and we could paint back these areas, or the other thing we could do is we could go the opposite way and just fill it with black. So let's hit the D key, and then that resets the background color for black, and now we're going to fill this mask with black. Well, actually, since it's by default it's white, which means that it doesn't affect that layer, we could actually just invert it. So let's just hit Control I. With the mask selected, notice it becomes black, and now the contents of that are hidden. So notice as I turn that layer on and off, it hides it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to grab a white brush, and then we're just going to paint in the areas that we want to show the cloning. So let's go up to our brush. We're going to grab our brush, and now let's go to our brushes palette here, and we're going to choose the exact brush we want. So we want to definitely have size. We want to have size turned on. And let's first of all choose a more appropriate brush. Typically when I'm doing this kind of masking, I like to use a hard edge brush. So let's use a hard edge brush here, and we're going to turn off everything here. We'll leave smoothing on. And the only thing we want to work with right now is shape. We're going to set the size to pen pressure. There we go. So now as we press harder, we get a thicker brush, and we press lighter, we get a finer brush. So let's just click away so we can drop that down a little bit. Now with the mask selected, now we can start to paint. And notice as we paint, we're just showing the background. Because we're adding black here. Actually, we're adding white to the black palette and showing the image underneath and the layer underneath if we show that. So we're just going to paint this in. Let's zoom in a little bit. Let's grab our magnifying glass. And we're going to zoom in, grab our brush, and now we're just going to just carefully just using the pressure sensitivity. Notice if I push really light, I get a very, very fine edge, and I can get very precise. Let's go back up here, do the same thing. Just a very, very light touch there. And let's come in very carefully, right on the edge. And let's even go into this quarter light here. Look at that, we can even paint that out. And now if we zoom out, there's our car, and notice that we've cloned that out really nicely by using those different features. And you would never know that there was a pole there before.